Okay, here we go. This is the 12th installment of our podcast, Existential Ambiguity.
Last step on the hero's journey.
Well, if you're going to be a hero, you eventually come to the point where it's time to disappear and go to your Valhalla or wherever it is that heroes go. And in our case, of course, they go to unbinding and becoming arhats and all that. So we're talking here about how to actually undo the structures that keep us in ignorance, that keep us in material existence and conditioned consciousness.
Break out of the prison in our minds.
Yeah, what were you just saying? All determinations are impermanent, therefore they're unsatisfactory.
And therefore the things that they determine are not self or part of a self.
No, because a self, by definition, has to be permanent. And if our self is determined by something which itself is impermanent, then it cannot give the pleasure that we are looking for from a self. Which is that it's stable, it's always going to be there.
Permanent and pleasurable.
Yes.
Well, it's not.
No, it can't be. It can't be because it's built on external sense objects. And we went through the whole, in this series a few episodes back.
Even internal sense objects.
What's that?
Even internal sense objects. But I guess you said external sense objects. But the internal sense objects are in turn based on the external sense objects?
Well, yeah, it all starts with immediate experience. And whether that experience is of a mental object or a physical sense object, external or internal, self-generated, or just comes from nature or wherever. Wherever. It's impermanent.
Impermanent.
Yes. And the root structure given by the Buddha, observed by the Buddha, and recounted by him, and then confirmed by our own self-observation, shows that the self is always built on some kind of perception. The perception is there first. The immediate experience is there first.
Yeah.
And then comes the layers of software. The recognition that there is a perception. Then the recognition, what is that perception? And then we begin to conceive in that conception, in that perception, that I am. And so we start to add to the perception. We start to evaluate it. We start to characterize it as this and that. We start to tell a story about its relation to I. And this is where the I is born. In the stories that we tell about the things that we perceive, in the process of appropriation or making them ours.
Stealing them
For all practical purposes. And fabrication, or to state it bluntly, lying about it, making up a story about it. Just like a little kid, Little kids make up stories about everything.
It's make-believe all over the planet.
Now it's make-believe that I love you. Let us make believe that you love me.
Actually, I cling to you, because I get my sense of self from you.
Yes. That's the nature of all conditioned relationships. So the I is fabricated in relation to objects, whether internal or external, that we think we possess. Just because they're in relation with our senses, for no other reason.
They're in our space, so they must be ours.
That's right. It's mine.
Not yours.
So we make our I based on those things. But here's the hidden catch. They're impermanent.
They're going to change and pass away.
Yeah. So what's going to happen to I, the great me?
It's going to change and pass away too.
Absolutely. And because it changes and passes away, it cannot really be called a self.
No.
It could be called a quote-unquote self.
A constructed, phony fabricated self.
Yes.
But the thing is, we can do that, but there aren't really any benefits. There are only bad effects.
Well, the benefits are there. I mean, take for example,
we perceive them as benefits.
We perceive it as benefit. For example, that we can take this very same process of appropriation and then weaving stories to create huge organizations for commercial or political exploitation.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Of the resources on the planet. Isn't that great?
That's great.
Oh boy, especially if you happen to be the head.
On the top, yeah,
the
it's
ego.
more for me.
Yeah. So what has happened is that this process of ego making has spiraled into a whole group thing.
Yeah.
Creation of these massive abstractions like governments and corporations that are now exploiting the planet, exploiting people all over.
And now they want world domination, because that's like even stronger impression of a self.
Well, the world domination game has been going on for a long time.
Yeah.
But the point is this really a net gain for all the beings on the planet? I don't think so.
No.
I think it's actually the source of a great deal of suffering.
It's not
unnecessary.
Not even a great gain for the person who succeeds, and definitely not for his children or grandchildren.
No, because they have to take all the karma. This is what people don't see. They don't see the eventual results of all of this exploitation in the fact that they have to take a lower birth and suffer.
What's the meaning of becoming master over hell? You turn the planet into hell, and then you're the boss.
That's really insane. So we'll try to close our discussion on clinging today. Finish up chapter 4 in Weti Muni's book, The Buddha's Teaching and the Existential Ambiguity. The Ambiguity of Existence. Existential Ambiguity is our podcast based on it. And we're going through the book and explaining or explicating, actually, the topics in the book to make them clear both to ourselves and to the readers.
Explicate means expand upon the original material?
Yeah, it means like take the points one by one and show how they connect to all the previous points and so on. And I'll also give practical examples and so on and so on and so on. So there's a little bit of exegesis involved.
Definitions, please.
Exegesis, Christ. Exegesis means when you take a text, especially a sacred or classical text, and you explain it.
Yeah.
Because things change in time. And these original teachings of the Buddha were written down centuries ago, 25 centuries ago to be exact. And things have changed since then.
Even the definitions of words have changed.
Especially the definitions of words. Governments are now, since the Roman Empire,
rewriting the dictionaries.
All regularly rewriting the dictionaries.
Good way to create confusion.
Not confusion, but to bend people's minds in the directions that they think they want them to go. So we have to completely recast and redefine the Buddha's teaching in every generation to keep it live, to keep it fresh from our own realization of it and in reference to the original suttas. So that's what we're doing here. All of this is based on the Theravada suttas. None of us is made up, and we quote the suttas regularly. So anyway, we're going to try to finish chapter 4 today, and then we can go on in the next episodes. We are at the point of discussing the relationship between clinging and desire. Clinging, of course, is the mechanism by which we try to keep around the factors that contribute to our so-called identity. And so we want to make an identity that's going to persist, that's going to last for some duration in time. So we cling to it, especially we cling to the perception of pleasurableness that there is in being, appropriating it, and not letting it go. Okay. So this is fundamentally considering or taking a thing as I. That's clinging. And then desire is taking the perception of pleasurableness in being as I. Let me give you an example. I'm getting a new car, right? A Tesla. The latest, coolest model, right? So I get a great deal of pleasure out of the anticipation of being a Tesla owner.
Even before you have it.
That's right. Even just thinking about it. Even before I've actually paid for the car or ordered the car or
have it break down.
Or done anything, or have it break down for the first time, right? I'm thinking in the future. I'm projecting. I'm looking forward to the day when I will be a Tesla owner. Now I'm getting pleasure from that. And thinking, oh, I am such a great I. I will be the owner of this.
How much
car.
do human beings do this daydream about? Make air castles
constantly.
I think almost even more than they worry about the past, what they should have done,
or the future, what might happen. Well, they consider that this kind of building castles in the air, this desire, is the antidote for the suffering of worry about, either the past or the future.
Yeah, or and a way to get by in the drag of being a wage slave or something like that.
Right, you have this dream that, I'm going to take this money I'm making and I'm going to get this cool stuff with it. Whatever it is for you, the perception of pleasurableness in being as I. Okay? In other words, normally, or in the beginning, we desire a thing. This is called ignorance. We desire to enjoy something. So the way we do it is we take this thing, we appropriate it, and then we cling to it. In other words, we make it mine and then we build an I on it. Okay? But desire is taking the perception of pleasurableness. Remember, pleasurableness is a mental feeling.
That cigarette's gonna taste so good.
In being as I. In being what? In being the enjoyer of whatever it is we're enjoying. Okay? So let's take the car example, okay? If I'm taking the pleasurableness of the conception of being a Tesla owner as I. I'm appropriating it, making it mine, and then basing my identity on that.
And getting some enjoyment.
Yeah, there's some enjoyment. But then, the bill is going to come.
And the real car isn't what it's cut out to be.
Never.
Same with the cigarette. The perception of smoking a cigarette when you really want a cigarette is so nice. Then when you take one, it's like,
After the first puff, it's ugh. Yeah. So this is true of everything concerning desire, because the anticipation is always better than the actual thing itself. With the anticipation, there's no hardware involved. It's all software. So it can be as good as you can make it.
Yeah.
But once you actually get the thing, it's never as good as you imagine it. There's always some shortcomings. So desire is perceiving the perception of pleasurableness in being the enjoyer of something as I. Why is that so complicated? Because there's all these layers of software that go into making that thing happen, that illusion. It's just like when you see a video game on a computer, something that most people are familiar with these days. Beneath that display on the screen, there are layers and layers and layers and layers of software, all the way down to the hardware of the computer itself.
Yes.
And then you have your operating system, your drivers, your operating system, your disk operating system, the loader, the memory allocation, the blah, 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 blah. All these layers, And if any of them breaks, your game crashes. Similarly, if any of the layers of software in making this I go bad, I mean, really, what could go wrong? Well, everything can go wrong because it's all temporary and it's all conditional. If one of the things down at the bottom of the stack has a runtime error, your I can crash.
Your idea of the thing will always be wrong in the beginning.
Well, of course.
And then even if it's enjoyable, it will change and go away.
Right. Or when you finally get the thing, the package arrives in the mail, right? You rip open the box and it's got a big scratch in it or something. There's always something wrong. Okay? Yeah. So now we've caught up with where we were in the previous episode. This is our usual 15-minute introduction. Just to get back to where we were, because we also have to build up these layers of software.
Load the ontology.
Yeah, to describe this stuff. Desire has the characteristic of looking forward. It depends upon anticipation. Vinicchayo. The Buddha says, dependent upon anticipation, desire and lust. And he says in the Mahatanha Sankhaya Sutta from the Majjhima Nikaya. Now, dependent upon anticipation, desire and lust. This anticipation includes an evaluation from the point of view of pleasurableness. How much pleasure am I going to get out of this thing?
A lot.
How much am I going to get out of this other thing? Although, which one should I allocate resources for? Which one should I pursue?
And the Puthujjana will always choose the one that is perceived to give the most pleasure.
Always. That is his computation. That is his basis for evaluating everything.
That's how we are run.
Yes. Even if apparently we're giving up something, making a sacrifice, some kind of religious sacrifice or something like that. It's very common. It's in the anticipation of getting more pleasure later on.
Or maybe you give up some grosser pleasure in exchange for some subtler pleasure.
Well, yeah, instead of going down to the bar and playing pool this afternoon, I'm going to study my math textbooks.
Instead of getting drunk, I'll get some bhava from chanting.
Well, that's another one, a religious computation. There are all these different computations, and they're all based on the value system of pleasure. Pleasure is the coin of the kingdom when it comes to the mind, identity, how we make decisions, and so forth. And why is this a problem? Well, let me just back up a second. The word that we mentioned before, vinicchaya, which we translate into English as anticipation, also includes the aspect of evaluation. So, what does this really mean? What is desire really? we want to continue the present mode of being. Being in quotation marks. In other words, it's phony being. It's not real being.
Maintain our constructed being.
It's constructed, it's fabricated being. Or to fabricate a new mode of being, quote unquote, in the immediate future.
That we think is better.
Right. We're looking forward to increasing the amount of pleasure we're experiencing. So we may actually go through a phase of desiring non-being. Unmocking our being, so that we can mock up a better being.
Yeah.
Okay. And this is going on all the time too. Underneath the surface. So desire is, in its essence, a desire for a certain type of being. Quote unquote.
Yeah.
A certain type of fabricated being.
What were the three forms of craving? It was for sense objects,
sensuality,
being and non-being.
Being? No, there was something else. Was it non-being?
Those three.
Those three are the fundamental types of craving. Sensuality, being, and non-being. And why would we crave non-being? So that we can have a better kind of being in the future. Right? So the specific form or mode of being, quote unquote, is a secondary calculation, dependent upon the primary calculation of pleasure. So then the realization of a desire for being is, however, always is the desire of a specific mode of being. But which specific mode of being we pick depends on how much pleasure we think we're going to get out of it. Now, there cannot be being, quote unquote, in other words, fabricated being, separate from some object, something or other that is reckoned to be that being. I cannot be a Tesla owner separate from the car.
Tesla car, yeah.
Yeah, the car has to be there, even if it's only there virtually.
You can't just be. You gotta be in relation to something.
That's right. It's always, I'm a Tesla owner. I am the enjoyer of this object. Whatever object it might be that we think is going to give us the most pleasure.
Might even be the bliss of the jhanas is still an object.
Yeah, it's an object because it's a mental perception. So even in the case of things that exist only mentally, I was thinking about bhakti the other day, actually yesterday. I was thinking how bhakti is, once you get, to the top, once you get to the super highly confidential books that they only let the initiates read, bhakti is a system of guided imagery. It's
guided imagination.
A system of visualization of a particular state after death.
A particular pastime.
Right. A pastime means a place like a spiritual world where there is a form of God, particular form, and special activities according to your taste. So you're basically...
It can be intensely pleasurable.
It can be. But...
You go into separation after that.
It's all virtual. And it's all virtual. There is no proof. There is no real physical experience.
That's why they go through this
ups and
intense bliss and then separation, like intense despair and doubt and all those things.
Yeah.
Maybe it's just my imagination.
Yeah, well, it is your imagination. Duh. This is when I discovered this. This is when I actually started to doubt, or to lose faith in the Vedic path. Because if this is the ultimate, highest, most sophisticated spiritual technology available in the Vedas...
Shouldn't be any suffering.
No, there shouldn't. And the fact that there was, even having reached that point, even doing that practice to the best of my ability, I was still experiencing suffering. That told me there was something wrong.
Even they do say in the Vedas that there is suffering, like in separation, but it's supposed to be really sweet.
Even God is suffering.
Yeah.
They talk about, like, Krishna is in Dwarka and he's feeling separation from his devotees in Vrindavan. He's suffering. He's crying.
Yeah.
He doesn't want to get out of bed. He's depressed.
But they paint that suffering as some sublime state that's even higher than the pleasurable states.
Now, how do you see? That's really wild. So, in other words, I'm going to suffer, and my suffering is going to be even more enjoyable than my enjoyment. What?
Let's back up here.
See, that's when it starts to get like, wait a minute. What is wrong with this picture? And there's a lot wrong with it. Because you see that the institutions built on this conception are squirrely, man. They're filled with sociopaths. They're filled with exploitation and the authoritarianism and discrimination and all kinds of nasty stuff that we don't like, you know.
And all religious organizations are like that.
They are.
All hierarchies, probably.
All hierarchies are ultimately like that. But why would a religion that is based on love and beauty and truth, the way they claim, create an organization that's filled with its opposite? Or why would a spiritual process that's supposed to generate the highest bliss also generate the greatest suffering? Well, it's because of the things that we're talking about here.
We're mocking up an intensely pleasurable lie, and we have to come down from that.
Yeah, you can't maintain it forever. You can't even maintain it for very long.
No. And most of the people higher up the chain, they don't even pretend to imagine those things. They're busy managing the material resources and trying to get that kind of enjoyment.
There's only a few contemplatives off in the forest reading those really esoteric books and trying to get into those states of mind and stuff.
Most people are jockeying for position, creating a material self.
Yeah. And the other people, the followers, are simply following some rule-based process for material advantages, basically.
Well, they're being sucked dry.
Yeah, they are.
By the higher layers.
They're being exploited.
But that's all material hierarchies again.
Here we are, right back where we started in the beginning of the podcast, talking about these abstractions. These huge abstractions based on the same principle of ego building,
extensions
but when
of
it's
self
projected on a larger canvas and used to create these huge structures that exploit people, that they suck the life out of people, you know. And the same thing has happened in Buddhism. The same exact thing has happened. The Buddha, the temples, they all have a statue of the Buddha who is worshipped and offered things just as if he was personally present.
Well, he said that the teaching should be his people's teacher.
That's right. The teaching should be the object of worship. The teaching, the Dhamma, was the Buddha's object. Somebody asked him, what is your object of worship? And he said, the Dhamma itself. See? So the Buddha wanted us to worship the Dhamma because the Dhamma is eternal, whereas the Buddha attained unbinding at the end of his life. He's gone, man. They say it, gate, para samgate. Huh? He's gone, man. He is so gone, he is never coming back. He is gone. Erased. Okay? So how can we offer him anything? He's not there.
Offering the Buddha stuff is just like really preliminary karma to create good intentions.
Very, very preliminary. And the real Buddhist is the one who worships the teaching, who follows the Vinaya, the principles, and does the meditations and studies the philosophy and all like that.
Yeah.
The
one who's practicing deconstructing his fabrications.
Yes. That's the real follower of the Buddha. So, now, we got to the point where we can understand there can't be being separate from some object. internal or external. So that means all types of being, quote unquote, are temporary. That means they will all go away sooner or later.
So they're unsatisfactory.
Unsatisfactory. So we are giving precedence to the conceit, I am. Not because it's structural, not because it's required for our existence. It's not. The individual exists just fine without an ego.
Much better, actually.
Yes. But because it's the most important point to explain in the understanding of suffering, dukkha. We'll take up dukkha later on in very great detail. But for right now, the main thing to understand is that because the clinging, the thing that we're clinging to is temporary. You may be enjoying it now, but in the future, it's going to go away and you're going to suffer. And that doesn't mean that you should have, a backup. It means the process itself is flawed.
Yeah.
Okay. So, anything more to say about that before we try to sum up?
Yeah, I was just thinking that this idea of a self, it's actually the handle that people higher up in hierarchies have on people.
That's a good insight. See, we're not just talking about the theory here. We're also trying to see how the theory is manifest in life, and how it spreads throughout the whole society and causes a lot of the problems that we see, not only on the individual level, but on larger scales as well. Because it's the same process, making a fabricated self. I mean, the U.S. Supreme Court not long ago ruled that a corporation has more rights than a natural-born person. So, this is the most ridiculous thing ever, but it points to the nature of the fabrication. That is, it's the same process that we use to create a person, quote unquote, is also used to create a corporation, a nation state, a religion, or any large organization. What we've been talking about this whole time in chapter 4 of Weti Muni's book is clinging, upadana. Okay? And clinging means appropriating the immediate experience, whatever objects are there, and bringing it into subjugation. If I can control something, it's mine. If I can have something, then I can base an I on it.
Yes.
I am the owner of this. And if I can become the owner of something, then I have something that I can trade. I can exchange with others for similar value and so on. You see, so the whole game, the whole human society is a fabrication based on the original fabrication of I and mine.
Yeah.
And we have to see this very clearly. And this is why throughout recorded history, there has been a mostly covert, but a very effective program to get rid of the Buddha's teaching, because he exposes this. And it's not supposed to be exposed to view, It's like the Wizard of Oz, the man behind the curtain, If once you see the man behind the curtain with all the dials and levers,
you don't believe in the wizard anymore.
No, you can't. Because you've seen, and once you've seen it, you can't unsee it. So we've seen the man behind the curtain. We've seen how the I is fabricated based on the desire objects, the sense objects, or the mental objects, constructs in the mind.
The funny thing is that people create all these disturbances and trying to get some pleasure out of a sense object and creating suffering instead of like not loading any sense object into their space and having all the bliss you want.
Well, there is bliss naturally in the concentrated mind.
Yes. That's why we get pleasure from sense objects, because the mind calms down and focuses on an object for some time.
That's correct. But we don't see that.
No.
We only see our experience of the object and the pleasure we get from it. Pleasure concentrates the mind naturally. That's why some people, the tantrics, for example, they compare the moment of orgasm to a moment of enlightenment. But it's different because in that mode, the concentration is coming from some external or internal object.
It's dependent.
It's dependent again. It's conditioned. Okay? But when you sit down and concentrate your mind on nothing or something, doesn't matter, then you are doing that. That is not dependent on anything. Okay? So once you experience this state of concentrated mind, you will wonder, well, why did I ever need to rely on sense objects?
In the beginning, it's dependent on the breath, and then it's dependent on concentrating on some object, but the object becomes more and more subtle until you unbind everything, and then it's...
Yeah, and then all you have left is the concentrated mind itself, which is pure pleasure.
Yeah, it's ultimate happiness, it's called.
Yeah. So why we want these temporary, miserable, flickering sense pleasures when we could have the eternal pleasure of the concentrated, themeless concentration, as the Buddha calls it. There's no object of contemplation or concentration, but the mind is concentrated just because it feels good.
Yeah, and for all those that are attached to more tangible stuff, on the way up to themeless meditation, you go through all kinds of other stuff. That's really nice too.
Yeah, you get everything that you could imagine and more.
Yeah.
That's what people don't understand.
You get so much pleasure that giving up sense objects in the end will be effortless.
Yeah. In fact, they'll be bothersome.
Yeah, they'll disturb the mind.
Yeah, like
disturb your concentration.
Like, get out of here, beautiful girl. I don't want disturbing my meditation. Now, so it means that constructing the false ego, constructing the false self, is simply a matter of consideration. Samanupassati in Pali. It's nothing but, it's reckoning. You use the word reckoning. What do you reckon that is now?
We wrongly consider that we will get pleasure from it.
We consider, I'm going down into, I'm drilling down again into how we do it.
Yeah.
We consider the object I and mine. It's just a consideration. It's just a thought. It's just a concept.
An idea.
Yeah, and it doesn't necessarily have any actual reality.
Fanciful notion.
Yes. A conception. Okay? Considering samanupassati and conceiving manyati differ in that the factor of deliberation is clearly present in considering, while deliberation is merely present or almost absent in conceiving.
Pregnant.
Yeah.
You said present.
Oh, did I say? I had my glasses off. It's merely pregnant, right. In other words, the deliberation only comes afterwards. Okay? When we actually make something ours, we don't think about it. There's really very little thinking involved.
We do stuff because we want to, and then we create the story of why we did it.
Exactly.
And we had this realization long before we even contacted the teaching of the Buddha.
That's right. Well, what we were studying at the time was based on the teaching of the Buddha.
Yeah.
It just didn't acknowledge the origin of that thought.
Like that.
Yeah, that's what's going on. A lot of, especially New Age teachings and self-help stuff, est and stuff like that, are based on the teaching of the Buddha, but they're adapted to make one little consideration for the Western audience, which is they allow you to keep the idea of self.
Yes. Which breaks the whole thing.
Well, details.
But you get some short-term benefit.
Yes, you do. But then you lose it again. And we saw this with Scientology, the same thing.
But you get enough of a benefit to that people will pay you millions of dollars for it.
That's right. But then later on, they lose that benefit and they have to pay you another $10,000 for the next course of whatever.
Plus they go crazy.
Well, in the end, they go crazy because the whole thing is based on a contradiction. That you can have exalted states of consciousness and still keep your idea of a fabricated self. Or that you can, in the religious field, that you can have an eternal identity, a self that lasts forever. See? And because these are fundamental falsities, they're not true, they're impossible. Okay? Because the objects on which those eyes are based are all temporary. Those promises can never be kept. And when it becomes apparent that they aren't going to be kept, the person breaks down.
If you mock up some kind of being, then you'll always suffer when that being breaks up.
That's the general case, yes. Yeah, by the general case, I mean that's what always happens.
Yeah.
How it happens is the details.
Yes.
Okay. So, from this point of view, considering, in other words, making up stories about stuff, is a more mature form of conceiving. You have to conceive in something to make it mine, and to base an eye on it.
Yes.
But then you're just
tagging it.
It's you do it without thinking.
Yeah.
As mine. Then later on, you make up a story about it to justify it.
Which becomes the self.
To justify it to yourself and others. Okay? Why did you take that thing? Well, because it's mine. And make up a story why it's mine and so on and so on. So, this means, I'm going to read from Weti Muni's book, this means that to hold a thing, to cling to it, to appropriate that thing, to bring a thing into subjection or cling to it is fundamentally to consider it I or mine. It's a consideration in the mind. The same thing applies to phenomena called attaching, desiring, lusting, etc. Except desiring and lusting is more like future-oriented. It contains the expectation that I will do this or I will have this. Yeah.
It's a future-oriented thing. The object is in the future, but the feeling of pleasure is in the present.
So, to be attached to a thing, to desire a thing, to lust for a thing, is to fundamentally and essentially consider that thing as being I, or as being for I, and then enjoying that being, okay? Enjoying that I.
Enjoying the mental pleasure.
Right. That's lusting and desiring. So, for this reason, all these phenomena, attachment, which is called ajosana, desire, chanda, lust, raga, etc., are also called clinging, upadana, in the suttas. The suttas have this one generic term, upadana, that includes all these other more specialized aspects, lusting, clinging, attachment, desire, lust, and so forth. So this is mine, etang mama, is a rationalization. It's not real. It's a conceptual elaboration of conceiving the manjana described in the root structure that we went over umpteen episodes ago. I am this. Eso aham asmi. This is a rationalization of the conceit that I am. So in other words, what is a rationalization?
An explanation?
Let's look it up. What does Mr. Oxford have to say about it? A rationalization is an attempt to explain or justify one's own or another's behavior or attitude with logical, plausible reasons, even if these are not true or appropriate. So we see something we like, we make it ours, we enjoy it, and then we make up this story about why it was okay. Well, it was mine. Okay, so
that's just me.
Yeah.
Can't help myself.
So oh boy. So these are rationalizations of the conceit I am. In other words, if we didn't consider, first of all, that we exist, that I exist, then we couldn't say that something is mine.
No.
So the conceit I am, in other words, this false ego persists for some time, is the rationalization for the appropriation, the clinging. This is mine. Why is this yours? Oh, because I am. See, I am has to exist first. And then that becomes the root of this is mine. Because I am, then I can take things. I can have things.
Mine came first.
Structurally, it does. But as far as in the rationalization of the mind.
Oh, in your story.
Yes. In the story, the assumption is, I am.
Therefore, stuff can be mine.
A priori assumption.
Yes.
Yeah. So going into the whole thing, we go in with the assumption that we exist. Therefore, it's okay for us to have stuff.
So structurally, it happens one way. In our rationalization, we flip it around.
That's right. We turn the tail bass backwards. So this is mine is actually more fundamental structurally. But as far as our story goes, I am comes first.
Yeah.
That's the root conceit.
Yes, because and we think like that because we're not really connected to our immediate experience through reflection.
Reflexion, yeah. Reflexion, well, actually this root structure of this is mine and this am I is the reflexion with an X.
If you're aware of it, it's reflexion.
No. Even if you're not aware,
it's the reflection of the Putujana.
It's the reflection of the Putujana, the person who doesn't know anything about spiritual things, or has not been instructed by the Buddha specifically, because they think that they need all this to exist. It's no accident that in the early days anyway, when one became a Buddhist monk, he gave up all his possessions except his robe and his bowl. And he simply would beg every day for his food.
No sense objects to identify
No
with.
place to live. Yeah. The mode of living reflected the realizations that the Buddha had, that there is no self, the way we constitute a self.
So that's a nice explanation of why they do like that. Because there's always a good reason why the monks act a certain way, why they have these rules.
It's not arbitrary.
No, it's not, and it's not mystical.
No,
right. It's always some practical reason for it.
In fact, we could do a whole podcast episode on why Buddhism is not mystical. Okay, a lot of people try to make it mystical.
Yeah.
But let's leave that subject for now because that's a deep subject in itself. But I just want to try to wrap up this chapter 4.
Yeah.
That there are two artificial conceits. This is I, and this is mine. Okay. And these are two levels of clinging also. Things that are viewed as I, for example, especially the body and the mind, are clung to much more harder than the things that are simply thought of as mine. My car, my house, my this, my that.
Yeah.
You know, those things can be replaced. But when we think of the body or the mind being temporary, this causes extreme anxiety.
Yeah, we don't want to think about that.
But it's going to happen. It's going to happen, and just as sure as it's going to rain someday, you know. Well, here it rains just about every day.
Well, I had 300 friends, and none of them would touch this question with a 10-foot pole.
That's life. That's what all the people say.
You're crazy. You're radical.
You're crazy, huh? You're crazy because you're saying that things are temporary. See, this myth of the eternal I is so deeply embedded in the culture that to question it is grounds for expulsion. It's
heresy.
It's heresy. It's anathema. You're going to wind up. Huh?
Anathema?
Anathema means what must not be said.
Oh.
See, this is why I claim there's a long-standing program to try to cover up, pervert, change, and ultimately get rid of the Buddhist teaching. When Westerners started coming to Sri Lanka a couple hundred years back, they found a strange form of Buddhism where the Buddha's suttas were not being studied at all.
Really?
That's right. Only the commentaries.
Well, same as Mahayana.
Yeah. Well, it is the same as Mahayana is only the commentaries on the suttas.
The suttas are too high. Don't look at the suttas.
That's right. Don't look at the man behind the curtain. That bald guy in the red robe, don't pay any attention to him.
But that was only one strain of Buddhism here, because...
Well, the similar things were happening all over the world.
Yeah, but
look at the situation of Buddhadas found in Thailand. When he became a monk, and monks in Bangkok at that time were simply performing ceremonies and not hardly even preaching at all. It was only out in the forest monasteries there was any study at all, really, other than how to perform ceremonies. And those studies were of the commentaries, the Visuddhimagga and stuff like that. And same thing in Burma, same thing in Laos. We don't know about Vietnam because that Buddhist culture is pretty much destroyed by the Vietnam War.
Yeah, they bombed the whole thing there.
But
and same in Cambodia.
Yeah,
they just bombed everything.
Yeah, so we don't really know what was there.
There was probably some authentic Buddhism there then.
We don't know.
We don't know.
And we'll never know.
But there, I don't know why, but Albert Pike and Madame Blavatsky, they came to Sri Lanka and they Christianized the whole Buddhism thing.
Right. They introduced schooling based on Buddhist teachings. So it's a really strange concoction of two different things. But really, since the medium is the message, by introducing the system of schooling, they effectively Christianized Buddhism and turned it into a churchy kind of system that we see today. So, Blavatsky and Colonel there.
They weren't even Christians. They were like Lucifer.
Well, they're weird characters, man. But anyway,
it's like illusions within illusions.
They came in, they were I think they were acting agents of British intelligence because they introduced the British school system here in Sri Lanka for the Buddhists, which had never existed before. Up to that time, all the education there was in the monasteries. And so if you wanted to get an education, you became a monk.
Yeah.
And in the process, of course, you would experience all kinds of spiritual values. By separating the process of education from the spiritual atmosphere. They effectively
disenfranchised.
Yeah, they turned everybody into mundane monkeys.
Yeah,
just workers. And the whole thing has gone downhill since then.
Wow.
People say if you talk to the old people here in Sri Lanka, they'll tell you, oh yeah, when they introduced the school system, that's when everybody stopped going to the temples.
Yeah.
And now the monks, as Gyanavir noted, are a dumping ground for unwanted children. They all wind up in the monasteries. And so there's like second class, third class, fourth class people
in the temples.
In the temples.
So the temples degrade,
yeah.
And all the smart people are sent to school and being brainwashed.
All the smart people wind up in government and business. Strange world we live in, but that's the way it is.
Well, they're kind of they're sawing the branch that they're sitting on.
They are.
Because in the end, nothing will work.
It's true. They don't realize it because they're after the short-term gains. They're all putujanas. A little
hint of nectar.
What is that story about the man who's being chased by a tiger? And he comes to this sheer cliff.
Falls off the cliff and hangs onto a root.
Yes, right. He's hanging onto the root, and the root is gradually, pulling out step by step. And he's going to fall into the abyss, and he sees next to him there's these strawberries, So he picks his strawberry, and he's eating it.
He lets go of the root and takes the strawberry.
And going, oh, so good. No, he's holding the root with one hand. And he picks the strawberry with the other hand. Oh, that's good. So you've got the tiger of nescience chasing him, right? And the abyss of eternity about to swallow him up. And he's eating strawberries. And going, this is good. That's the position of the putujana. That they're willing to sacrifice everything for a little temporary pleasure. It's so pathetic, actually. It's like a poor starving animal who's willing to even go into captivity just to get a little something to eat.
Yeah.
It's pathetic. So this is the state of most people in these days and times. And we're giving the information how you can get out of this and actually become a human being in the full sense of the term by realizing the falsity of the present system. And
both inside yourself and in society.
And in society, yeah, the whole thing. And once you see this, anybody, the poor people who listen to this podcast,
if they
they're going to be like, they're going to be like, now what do I do? Well, now what you do is that you form a study group, and then you get some other people to see it. Because really, that's the only thing you can do. We've gone all over the world looking in these monasteries and things like this, and nobody is following this original teaching of the Buddha.
No.
Nobody's even aware of it. They all have some rationalization of why they don't have to follow it or something or other. I don't know. Anyway, saving the world is up to you. Now that you know this, you can't unknow it. So I feel sorry for you.
But you're really blessed.
You are really blessed, and it's going to lead to something wonderful. But we're not so attached to that. What we're attached to is that other people should also know these things. Because this is the real teaching of the Buddha. Yeah. And it must be really valuable because it has been so thoroughly suppressed, even in Buddhist countries, and replaced by a false Buddhism based on later commentaries and religious adaptations that feed the false ego instead of starving it. So on that note, since we're almost an hour now, 59 minutes and something.
And fun can definitely be had without the false self.
More fun.
Yes.
Lots more fun. So don't worry. It's not the end of enjoyment.
No.
It's just the end of enjoyment based on a false premise. Which is a lot more ethical.
Just the end of limiting your own energy. And
yeah.
suffering.
So on that basis, let's close this chapter 4, and in the next episode we'll begin chapter 5 of Weti Muni's book, The 5 Clinging Aggregates.
Hmm.